Forbes just made one of the dumbest decisions in sports media history. They released their annual 30 under 30 list for athletes, and Caitlin Clark didn't make it. Instead, they put Paige Bueckers and Aaliyah Boston on there. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Forbes is now dealing with a PR nightmare they created themselves, and the karma is absolutely beautiful to watch unfold. Before we get into this disaster, tell me in the comments, how does Forbes justify putting Paige Bueckers on this list over Caitlin Clark? I genuinely want to hear someone defend this decision because I can't find a single logical reason. Tell you, it looked like they're trying to replace Caitlin Clark with Paige Bueckers. Well, really, it ain't looking that way because she has been replaced with Paige Bueckers. Forbes just stepped on the biggest landmine in women's basketball, and they did it completely on purpose. The 30 under 30 list is supposed to highlight outstanding individuals under 30 who are making significant impacts in their fields. It's an annual tradition that gets attention and supposedly carries weight in recognizing influential figures. And somehow, someway, Forbes decided that Caitlin Clark, the most impactful player in women's basketball history, didn't deserve to be on that list this year. Let me repeat that so it really sinks in. Caitlin Clark, who broke every attendance record imaginable, who brought millions of new fans to the WNBA, who dominated headlines for an entire year, who changed the financial landscape of women's sports, somehow didn't make the cut. But you know who did make it? Paige Bueckers, who hasn't played a full professional season yet. And Aaliyah Boston, who's a solid player, but let's be honest, wouldn't be getting this recognition if she wasn't Caitlin's teammate. The internet exploded immediately. Fans couldn't believe what they were seeing. The Indiana Fever's official account posted congratulations to Aaliyah Boston for making the list, which is great for her. But the comments section was flooded with people asking the same question. Where is Caitlin? How does this make any sense? And Forbes has been suspiciously quiet about their criteria for selection. Let's break down why this decision is so absurdly bad. Caitlin Clark was literally Time magazine's Athlete of the Year. She was on the cover of major publications constantly. She was the most influential woman in sports, according to multiple rankings. She brought unprecedented visibility to the WNBA. Television ratings skyrocketed when she played. Arenas sold out wherever she went. Merchandise flew off shelves. Sponsors lined up to attach themselves to her brand. She was the story of women's basketball for an entire year. And Forbes looked at all of that and said, nah, we're good. Meanwhile, Paige Bueckers gets the nod, despite not having accomplished anything close to what Caitlin has in the professional ranks. Now, to be fair to Paige, she's incredibly talented. She's going to be a star in the WNBA. Her college career has been impressive when she's been healthy. She has a massive following and genuine skill. But comparing her impact to Caitlin's at this moment is laughable. It's not even close. Paige hasn't played a single WNBA game yet. She hasn't proven she can dominate at the professional level. She hasn't moved the needle for the league in any measurable way. So, what exactly is Forbes basing this decision on? The only explanation that makes sense is that Forbes is trying to manufacture the next big thing by pushing Paige as Caitlin's replacement. They're trying to create a narrative where Paige is the new face of women's basketball before she's earned it. And that's insulting to both Paige and Caitlin. Paige doesn't need Forbes artificially propping her up. She's talented enough to earn recognition on her own merit. And Caitlin certainly doesn't deserve to be pushed aside for someone who hasn't accomplished a fraction of what she has. Then there's Aaliyah Boston. She's a good player. She's consistent. She's been to multiple All-Star games. She contributes on both ends of the floor. But let's be brutally honest, she's only on this list because she plays next to Caitlin Clark. If Aaliyah was putting up the exact same numbers on the Dallas Wings or the Atlanta Dream, nobody would be talking about putting her on any Forbes list. Her visibility comes entirely from being Caitlin's teammate and benefiting from the attention that Caitlin brings to the Indiana Fever. The article about Aaliyah's inclusion talks about how she elevated her game during the playoffs and provided steady presence for the Fever. That's all true and commendable. But it's also true that the Fever only made that playoff run because of Caitlin Clark. The entire offense ran through Caitlin. Opposing defenses schemed exclusively to stop Caitlin. The media coverage focused on Caitlin. The ticket sales and ratings were driven by Caitlin. Aaliyah benefited from all of that attention and opportunity. Again, she capitalized on it well, but she's not on this list without Caitlin creating that platform. Caitlin Clark snags another honor. She's made the Forbes 30 under 30 list. Clark, who is just now 22 years old, is the only professional women basketball player on this list. Forbes says Clark was chosen for leading the Indiana Fever to their first playoff appearance in 8 years, while breaking the WNBA single-season assist record and earning Rookie of the Year honors. But wait, there's more. She also led the WNBA All-Star Game voting with more than 700,000 ballots and is then credited with an increase in league viewership. What makes this snub even more frustrating is that Forbes included Caitlin on last year's 30 under 30 list when she was still in college. So they recognized her impact then. But now, after she's had an even bigger year professionally, after she's proven that her college success wasn't a fluke, after she's legitimately changed the trajectory of the WNBA, suddenly she doesn't make the cut. The logic doesn't exist. Some people are trying to defend Forbes by suggesting that maybe they don't want to include the same people multiple years in a row, that they want to highlight new names and give recognition to players who haven't been featured before. And sure, that could be a reasonable policy, except Forbes has included the same athletes multiple times on these lists in other sports, so that explanation doesn't hold water either. This feels targeted. This feels like a deliberate decision to downplay Caitlin's impact. The backlash has been severe and immediate. Fans are calling out Forbes on every social media platform. Sports analysts are questioning the criteria. Even casual observers who don't follow women's basketball closely are scratching their heads at this decision, because even people who don't watch the WNBA know who Caitlin Clark is. Her cultural impact transcended the sport. She became a mainstream figure in a way that women's basketball players rarely do. And Forbes decided that wasn't worthy of recognition this year. Here's where the karma comes in. Forbes publishes these lists to generate attention and establish themselves as cultural tastemakers. They want people talking about their selections and sharing their content. Well, they got exactly what they wanted. People are absolutely talking about this list, but not in the way Forbes hoped. Instead of celebrating the athletes who made it, everyone's talking about the glaring omission. Instead of Forbes looking smart and insightful, the discussion around Caitlin's absence has generated way more conversation than the list itself would have otherwise. Articles are being written specifically about the snub. YouTube videos are being made breaking down how ridiculous this decision is. Social media is flooded with criticism. Forbes wanted attention, and they got it. But it's negative attention that makes them look incompetent. That's karma. And it gets better. Because by snubbing Caitlin, Forbes has actually given her and her fans a rallying cry. Now there's concrete evidence of disrespect that can be pointed to. Now there's motivation for Caitlin to prove doubters wrong yet again. Now there's a narrative about mainstream publications not properly recognizing her impact. That's fuel. That's the kind of thing that elite competitors use to drive themselves. Forbes might have just given Caitlin extra motivation heading into next season. The Paige Bueckers inclusion is particularly telling about what Forbes is trying to do. Paige is phenomenally talented and has huge potential. But she's also been injured frequently, which has limited her college career. She hasn't dominated in the way that Caitlin dominated. She hasn't broken the same records or generated the same level of sustained excellence. But she has the right image. She fits a certain marketable mold. She's got the social media following, she's got the brand deals lined up, and Forbes seems to be betting on that future potential rather than recognizing current accomplishments. That's a slap in the face to Caitlin, who has actually done the work, who has actually proven herself at every level, who has actually changed the game in measurable ways. Caitlin earned her recognition through performance and impact. Paige is getting recognition based on projection and marketing. Those are not the same thing, and Forbes should know better. The third player on the list, Napheesa Collier, is actually deserving of recognition. She's been one of the most consistent players in the WNBA for years. She's a champion. She's made all-star teams and all WNBA teams. She contributes at an elite level on both ends. Including her makes sense. But even that inclusion highlights how absurd Caitlin's absence is, because Napheesa's impact, while significant, hasn't been anywhere close to what Caitlin accomplished this past year. Some people have suggested that maybe Caitlyn's numbers weren't quite good enough statistically compared to other candidates. And sure, she had some struggles adjusting to the professional game early in the season, but she still finished with impressive stats and improved dramatically as the year went on. More importantly, her impact went far beyond individual statistics. She changed the financial landscape of the league. She brought new sponsors. She increased television contracts. She filled arenas. She made women's basketball culturally relevant in ways it had never been before. If Forbes 30 Under 30 is about impact, nobody had more impact than Caitlin Clark this year. Period. The timing of this snub is also suspicious. It comes at a moment when there's been growing discourse about whether the Caitlin Clark hype is dying down. Some content creators have noticed decreased engagement with Caitlin-related content compared to the peak of last season. Some are suggesting that the casual fans who showed up for the spectacle have moved on. And Forbes releasing this list without Caitlin feeds directly into that narrative. It sends a message that her moment has passed and it's time to move on to the next thing. But here's the problem with that narrative. It's being pushed by people who want it to be true, not by actual evidence. Yes, engagement has normalized from the absolute peak of March Madness and her first WNBA games. That's inevitable. You can't sustain that level of hysteria forever. But Caitlin is still the most popular player in women's basketball by a significant margin. She's still driving ratings and attendance. She's still the face of the sport. Pretending otherwise is wishful thinking from people who never wanted her to succeed in the first place. Forbes, jumping on this premature narrative, makes them look foolish because it's clearly not true. Caitlin's influence hasn't disappeared. It's evolved into something more sustainable. She's not a flash in the pan, she's the real deal. And Forbes will look even more ridiculous when she continues dominating next season, and they have to awkwardly try to explain why they left her off this year's list. So there you have it. Forbes made an indefensible decision, got destroyed in the court of public opinion, and gave Caitlin Clark extra motivation. That's textbook karma. If you enjoyed watching this disaster unfold,